Happy Democracy Day to you, Nigerians, and good evening. Tonight, we pause not just to mark a date, but to reflect on a journey. 26 years ago, on 29th of May 1999, Nigeria stepped out of nearly 3 decades of military rule and into the embrace of civilian governance. It was the dawn of the Fourth Republic, a defining chapter that began with President Olusegun Obasanjo swearing in, and a moment many hoped would end the cycle of coups, closures, and crackdowns since independence in 1960. We've walked a rocky path through civil war, annulled elections, and the silence of dictatorship. But through it all, the Nigerian spirit, the people's will, has remained unbroken. Now, 9 elections, 5 presidents, and over 2 decades later, how far have we really come as a people, and where are we going? Tonight, in this special edition of Channel Television's Democracy Day program, Nigeria's democratic journey we're exploring. We'll open the floor to voices that span generations, those who bore witness to the military years, those who marched for June 12th on the streets of Nigeria and in fact sent on exile, and the younger Nigerians who've only known democracy yet feel its weight every day. From the promises of 1999 to the protests of EndSARS, from record low voter turnout to renewed calls for constitutional reform, we'll interrogate the wins and the wounds and the work ahead. Welcome this evening to this intergenerational conversation on state of our nation, its democratic journey, and the way forward for a nation that is capable of so much more in the face of daunting challenges. I am Sean Akimbale, and I will be your host for this special program on Channel Television, your home for the news. Welcome on board, everyone. People who neglect its history, they say, might be lost in its own present and find it difficult to navigate through the future part. So, let me take you through a very fast lane on our political and democratic journey, and let me walk you through some of what has become a major part of our history. Don't you ever forget. And tonight, I'm summarizing this journey in this particular sentence: from chains to choices, Nigeria's journey, a road to democracy. First, let's begin and let's take a look at a phase of our political history. From 1960 to 1979, it was independence to uncertainty. We began on a rocky path. Well, it was independence from the colonial masters in 1960. And in 1966, there was a coup, a forced military coup, where the Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa was killed. In 1967 to 1970, it was a dark era of our history in Nigeria, the Civil War. And some statistics are saying about 2 million lives were lost. In 1970, well, we saw an end to that, and there was a Second Republic, which was short-lived under President Shehu Shagari. And of course, coups, chaos, and military dominance. That I tagged this new, another phase, which you could call between 1983 to 1998. 1983, the military returns under Major General Buhari, and there was another coup. In 1985, we saw General Babangida's rule, and the popular Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, came into play, and with policies under the military military era, and we saw a lot of human rights crackdown because there were a lot of defiance and a lot of protests, a push for democratic rule. But in 1993, there was the June 12th annulled election, which ignited major and mass protests. Several times, the then military dictator and the military president, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, had promised that he was going to return power to civilian, but that only happened in 1993 when we saw an election, but that was annulled. In 1998, General Abacha died, who of course took over at some point when Babangida exited the scene. General Abdulsalami Abubakar begins the transition in 1998 when he came into office. So this is another era in our history, and it marked a very, very challenging one, though, but one that we'll never forget in a long time to come. This man right here, MKO Abiola, keep the faith in your memory, because this is perhaps one man we'll talk so much about He said a lot of things, he's done a lot of things, and he made a decision in Nigeria's history that our democracy is now standing on. MK Abiola was presumed to have won that election, a mandate that was never allowed to stay. Elections were annulled by the Babangida junta, and an estimate of 14 million Nigerians voted in that election. Widespread outrage, people took to the street, international communities were interested, a lot of sanctions were meted on Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians, Nadeko and the rest of them. In fact, the president, Bola Tinubu, was one of those who were on the street protesting for this mandate to stand. He was a senator of the SDP, and this was a candidate of the SDP who won that presidential election at the time. But the aftermath was repression, resistance. 1993 to 1998 is another phase in our history as a people that we should not forget so easily. Abiola was declared himself in Lagos at Ekpetedo as a president, and that angered the military junta at the time, General Abacha, and the civil rights groups like Nadeko, students, civil rights groups and student organizations were pushing on the street on a daily basis. Over 100 people were said to have been killed in Lagos protests, and we saw Amnesty International giving some of these figures. But Abiola died in detention on the 7th of July, 1998. That is another phase, a sad, sad day in the history of Nigeria. And 1 month to his release, we understand. But let's take a look at what then happens. General Abdulsalami Abubakar, he worked on the transition. And we saw the first election in the Fourth Republic happened, where Olusegun Obasanjo spent 2 terms as a president, from 1999 to 2007. And President Muhammadu Yar'Adua became president in 2007, but died in office in 2010. And his vice at the time, President Goodluck Jonathan, took over in 2010 and 2015, but he could not win a re-election. In 2015, General Muhammadu Buhari of the APC, a party that was formed around 2013, 2014, won an election, defeating the People's Democratic Party. And since then, the APC has held sway until President Bola Tinubu became president, winning another election by the APC, a 3rd time running. And President Bola Tinubu remains Nigeria's president until death. I will be showing some pictures. Unbelievable. Because a lot of people who perhaps do not know, this sign on this man's cap didn't start only yesterday or when he was governor of Lagos. I will show you some pictures later on. But on June 12th, he was recognized. Kudos to this man, President Muhammadu Buhari. He made the bold decision in 2018. June 12th declared Democracy Day by President Buhari. MK Abiola was awarded GCFR posthumously, and today another kudos to President Bola Tinubu, awarding the wife Kudirat Abiola posthumously. Ganifa Ami and Babangida Kingibe were also recognized in 2018 by the President Muhammadu Buhari government. It was a symbolic shift from military handover to people's mandates. But again, the question is here. Where are we now? As a democracy under pressure? Voter turnout in 2023, perhaps the lowest that we have seen, 29%. What does this mean for our democratic journey? Electoral violence, 600+ incidents we saw and reported in 2023 general election. There has now been called for reforms, Electoral Act updates, e-voting, e-collation of results, judicial independence. These are some of the issues that have been raised. So democracy is a continuum, not a destination. And what Abiola said, he says, June 12th is not just a date, it is a symbol of our collective struggle, our resistance, and our refusal to surrender our voice. That's MK Abiola, and that seems to resonate. Tonight, we begin the conversation. But how do we then begin this conversation? Because there are a lot of the struggles. We have those struggles that are rich in pictures and sounds. And in this report, let's bring back those memories and remind you what it was and how it all began and where we find ourselves today. Watch this.
Today, Nigeria marks Democracy Day, a solemn reminder and a celebration of the nation's long and often painful journey towards civilian rule. But this is no ordinary day in our political calendar. June 12 once a date of betrayal and bloodshed, now stands as a national symbol of resilience, reform and remembrance. It began on June 12, 1993, a historic presidential election hailed as the freest and fairest in Nigeria's history. Business tycoon and philanthropist Chief Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola emerged a presumed winner under the Social Democratic Party. But the hope of millions was dashed when the military regime of General Ibrahim Babangida annulled the result, plunging the nation into political unrest.
It is true that the presidential election was generally seen to be free, fair, and peaceful. However, there was, in fact, a huge array of election malpractices virtually in all the states of the Federation before the actual voting began.
The annulment sparked mass protests across the country. Civil rights activists, students, journalists, and pro-democracy coalitions like NADECO rose in defiance.
They say categorically that this decision is unfair, unjust, and consequently unacceptable. The people of Nigeria, through their democratic decision of June 12, 1993, expect me to assume the reins of government. Yes. I fully intend to keep that date with history. Yes.
Abiola was arrested in 1994 after declaring himself president. He would later die in detention on July 7, 1998, under mysterious circumstances.
There can't be any cause for alarm. For us, and as we say in revolutionary parlance, the struggle continues. The court is just an attempt to raise the issues once again before the public and before the world. And I think that has been done sufficiently well.
It's an unfortunate incident, but it looks to me as if the Senate has just signed its own death warrant.
The democracy that we have today. We thank God for you, for me, and for others. Today is very, very important. I share the pride, the honor, and your sorrows with you. If Abiola were to be alive today, it would be a different story.
Nigeria is the only country we have.
Nigeria lived under military rule for 29 of its first 39 years of independence. It wasn't until May 29, 1999 that the Fourth Republic was born, ushering in Chief Olusegun Obasanjo as the first democratically elected president after the June 12 crisis.
I, Umar Musa Yar'Adua, do solemnly swear.
I, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I, Muhammad Buhari, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I, Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
In a significant policy shift, President Muhammadu Buhari in 2018 officially declared June 12 as Nigeria's Democracy Day, replacing May 29. He also posthumously awarded Abiola the GC, Nigeria's highest national honor, as a recognition of his democratic mandate.
I earnestly invite all Nigerians across all our national divide to accept it in good faith. Our action today is to bury the negative side of June 12 on behalf of the federal government. I tender the nation's apology to the family of late MKO Abiola, who got the highest votes, and to those that lost their loved ones in the cause of June 12 struggle.
Today, Nigeria grapples with democratic challenges, from voter apathy to electoral violence and disenfranchisement. Yet, the memory of June 12 endures, a rallying cry for electoral justice, accountability, and civil liberties. As we mark another Democracy Day, we remember the sacrifice of those who dare to dream. Their courage paved the road for the barrows of dictatorship to the ballot of democracy.
Very interesting indeed. This, perhaps, I think a lot of people should clip on and pass around on your WhatsApp and your social media, because it's a crisp summary of our history. But a lot of things happened today, which we're going to be talking about the legacy in this first segment of the program. But let me just give you a recap of what happened today from the presidential villa. My colleague Larry Lassisi has his report. Larry. Okay, we'll connect to Larry in a moment. But we bring you not just a retrospective, but a real, raw, and relevant national conversation on what it means to build a better nation together. And this segment, this part of the program, I'm bringing you those who directly were exiled, those who were on the street, those who lost parents in all of this struggle. Tonight, I'm being joined by the son of the woman who today has been recognized and honored by President Bola Tinubu and Nigerian government. Jamiu MKO Abiola is SSA2 President on Linguistics and Foreign Matters, and the son of the late MKO and Kudirat Abiola, who also wrote in 2015, The President Who Never Ruled and a Stolen Presidency. Mr. Jamiu Abiola, it's a pleasure having you on the program.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much indeed. Also, I have joining me Dr. Kade Fayemi, a man who ran radio, one of those who ran Radio Kudirat, a former governor of Ekiti State and a former minister. Dr. Kade Fayemi is virtually with us on the program. Thank you so much, Dr. Fayemi, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
And also a very eloquent voice in the struggle for Nigeria's democracy. He served also in the House of Representatives and advised past governments. He's also popularly now seen as a political activist. Dr. Usman Bugaje is also live with us virtually. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight.
My great pleasure, Sean.
Thank you indeed. I think it's the best way to begin with you, Mr. Abiola. Your father died in this struggle. Your mother died in this struggle. And today, she's been honored. As a person, you are the second child of Ms. Kudirat Abiola, isn't it?
I'm the third.
You are the third, but the first son, isn't it?
No, second.
The second son. So,
exactly.
How does it feel being a son to Kudirat and MKO Abiola?
Well, it is very, very tragic, and also at the same time very soothing, because tragic in the sense that for so many years, as you know, a lot of democratic administrations ignored the June 12 struggle, and they didn't even want to admit that it happened, and they ignored it. But thank God for the current president, who then was the governor in Lagos State. You know, he started the tradition of honoring June 12. I remember he became governor of Lagos State in May 29, 1999, and exactly 5 days after was the first June 4th anniversary of my mother's death. He came to our house 2 times that day, and I remember in those days as well, you know, he did a cenotaph for my mother to honor her, because he felt it was wrong for a woman to have put so much for democracy and for the federal government to ignore her sacrifice. So he put so much effort, and he even went as far as putting a cenotaph. He named, the Oregon Street. He did a lot so that he could honor my mother. So he was the soothing balm. He kept, us. We kept hope alive through him, because it's very painful when a lot of people, want to deny the role that she had played. That's my mother, and even my father too was not even acknowledged. But as luck would have it, as I said, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and of course Chief Olusegun Osioba in Ogun State also honored both my parents, and they also spoke to other AD governors and Chief Bisi Akande and other people. So we were it was more or less a Southwest thing. So there was a part of us that was confused, because I know my father won the election all over the country. So I was wondering, why is it only part of Southwest that was honoring him? And that goes on to prove the reason why we have a lot of problems in Nigeria. Our wealth is our diversity. And MQ's election was all over the country he won, because people decided that they were not going to look at tribalism, they're going to look at competence. But all of a sudden, the election had happened, and people are now going back to their shells, and they're now becoming okay, we're only going to recognize somebody that is Yoruba. Only the Yorubas were recognizing him. So it was discouraging. But as luck would have it, years after, Major General Muhammad Buhari honored in 2018, June 12, Democracy Day.
And apologized on behalf of the nation.
And I apologized.
That I thought that at the time, it was significant.
It was, and it's still significant, because, before that happened, we had been hoping. I wrote the book, The President Who Never Wrote, in 2015, because I came to realize that my father's name was like a memory that was becoming more and more distant. Some people were hell-bent on writing the history of Nigeria without him. Some people who come from abroad, from foreign presidents, they will mention Yaradua, they will mention other people, they will not mention Chibemke Abiola. So some people wanted to actually bury him, as my father would say, they wanted to shave his head in his absence. So I now wrote the book in 2015, The President Who Never Ruled. I bought so many copies on my own. I gave it out to people for free. I almost thousands of copies I gave out for free, so that his name cannot be forgotten. And as God would have it, the most loyal person to him at that time, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu, he's now the president of Nigeria. And may God bless him for honoring my mother today as well. She was just 44 years old. I asked you about your age before we started, and you said you were 44. She was just your age when she got killed. And, it's a compassionate leader that would actually remember somebody like that. And he did, and now, surprisingly, he's honored her today as well. So we hope we keep having this kind of leadership, and we hope we keep honoring people that have paid the ultimate sacrifice, because it's only when we do that that we encourage people to provide selfless service to the country. If people are going to provide service to the country and they're going to be ignored, a lot of people will say, you know what, instead of doing all of this, let me just, take whatever I can take from this country and let me go abroad.
Tell me your personal experience. Your mother was killed in the struggle. You lost your father for several years in the struggle. He was absent because he was fighting for that mandate. What was it like? How disruptive was that for your life?
It was very disruptive, and I just thank God, that God has said in the Quran that La yukallif la nafsan illa wus'aha, meaning that if somebody cannot bear something, God will not give it to the person. So God gave me that experience because God knows I can bear it. And when that happened, as God would have it, I've always been learning languages, but between the time my father was locked up and the time he died, I'd learned almost 7 languages. So that was like my own sanctuary, my own getaway. And I now became perfect in those languages. So you see, whenever something happens, God will always give you a solution. But a lot of people, they might have run mad, they might have committed suicide. So I've now been elevated above, not just even languages now. I'm looking at the world now as it's just a joke. As in, like, we're here temporarily and we will leave. So at this point, the world doesn't really mean so much to me.
How old were you when your father died?
When my father died, I was like 22. But when my mother died, I was like 19. But the world doesn't mean anything to me now because I look at it like God has told us that somebody that dies the way they died for a good cause is going to go to heaven. And God has also told us that where those people are going to end up is better than whatever this world has to offer. So at the end of the day, where my father and my mother are right now is better than anything in this world put together. As a matter of fact, the toilet where they're staying is even where kings will want to even stay in this world in comparison. So I've gone beyond looking at this world as anything, and that is the beauty of it. So
whatever the struggles were impacted on your family. and the family was not the same. I remember that you and your siblings were literally taken out of the country, isn't it?
We were not even in the country, and like the younger ones, the two of them were taken out of the country. So we were more or less on our own, at the end of the day. I mean, of course, my mother has a wonderful family. She has sisters and all that, but it's not the same. Once you lose your parents, you're on your own, because everybody has their own family. You can't be a nuisance, you can't be a liability to anyone. So we had to grow up very, very fast. And once you lose your childhood, you lose it forever. So these are things that can never change. But we, at this point, we are not going to start crying over spilled milk and thinking about what has happened in the past. The good thing about it is that we've moved on. None of us have run mad. None of us are crazy. But it was the most terrible thing. I would not wish my enemy to even have that kind of experience, because when you carry the weight of a whole 200 million strong country on your head, my direct siblings are only 7 of us, and the eldest was Leko, and at that point when my mother was killed, he was just like 22 years old. So at that point, it's like we were carrying the whole country on our head, and it was very unfortunate. But we thank God, as I said, we were able to survive, and we are.
How do you feel today?
Well, I'm very happy, especially with this that has happened, this honor that the president has.
And you're serving the same president who was very close to your father.
Yes, and that is why I'm saying that, but I'm happy about the fact that, the portfolio he gave me, which is linguistics and foreign, is something I'm actually good at. Because, I don't want to be like somebody that will say, I want to work for the president because my father and mother died for Nigeria. I want to actually do something that I'm actually competent at. So that's what actually makes me happy.
All right.
Because we want to bring value to the government.
Let me bring in another person who has a personal experience in the struggle for Nigeria's democracy and especially the relationship with MK Abiola, and that's Dr. Okade Fayemi. These were seen as enemies of the government, the military government at the time. Surreptitiously, they were operating a communication setup, the Kudirat radio at the time. And all of those efforts, Dr. Fayemi, would you say have paid off?
Well, democracy is a journey. Yes, it's partly paid off. It's not completely paid off. I wasn't particularly happy. And I must say this upfront, that those who were the drivers of that project, yes, I led that project, but none of them was recognized today by the president. Late Mr. Yinka Johnson, who coordinated that effort as our technical director, Bola Olalemi, late Dayo Johnson, George Noah, Shola Adeyeye, the senator, was a fiery voice on that Radio Kudirat, Dr. Tajuddin Abdurrahim, Philip Ilebereme, so many of the guys who were really involved. Yes, I was the face of Radio Kudirat in the sense that I was responsible for its management. But there were so many voices, so many people who risked their lives. But they were not the only ones not mentioned today. However, one must not undervalue what the president did today. He did the right thing. He built on the legacy that President Buhari already established. And I hope subsequently this history can be correctly told, and those involved, those who sacrificed, and those unsung heroes would all be comprehensively recognized. And a national monument, a national museum would hopefully be established somewhere in Abuja. It's bizarre that we don't even have a museum or a monument in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, where history can always be recalled for the purpose of teaching the younger generation what it means to fight for what you believe in. That's what Chief MK Abiola did. He fought for what he believed in. He could have remained in his cozy, wealthy realm and not get involved. But no, even at the risk of losing his life, he insisted that he would not give up on that struggle. And he didn't. And many, many Nigerians didn't. But what we mustn't do is now conflate election with democracy. What we got was to reestablish the right to vote our leaders into office in 1999. What we're yet to get is real democracy, in my view. We've got civilian rule. We're probably on the journey. We now have a semi-democracy, but now we don't have full democracy. But the efforts that the previous presidents and now President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has put into it, we all must build on that. But our theory of change must always recognize that elections do not a democracy make, and that democracy is a journey and not a destination.
Well, if you look at it, the exile and perhaps a lot of people, and this is something that is being taught widely in America, although you look at it, America still has a struggle, especially the black history in America, which is significant. Only in the 1960s did we start seeing women, blacks, to have the opportunity to vote. I mean, just in the 1960s. That's when all this started happening in America. But they still kept on in several schools, in high schools, teaching their children what black history is all about, and the struggle of the likes of Martin Luther King Jr., and what happened in Selma and some part of Alabama and some other struggles in D.C. and all that. Now, for someone like you, you are alive, you witnessed it, you operated it, you saw it, you were not allowed to stay in the country because of the threat of the military government. What was it like? Because a lot of young Nigerians don't know what it's even like, that you are operating a radio station that the government does not know where it existed. They were looking for those who are operating it up and down. A lot of people do not know what it means to be running in the fringes of the country, in the borders of the country, and running away from the eyes of the government for you not to be caught. What was it like? Your life was messed up, isn't it?
It was messed up, but it was also exhilarating. We were on the threshold of history. We were very determined to correct what we considered to be a travesty of justice and a travesty of humanity. We felt that we needed to bring our country back on track. And we were not really, I mean, it's not that we were not afraid or we were aimlessly bold. We just didn't fully think of the enormity of the threat it constituted beyond wanting to do the right thing. I mean, I carried transmitters of Radio Kuderas on an Air France flight that was destined for Cotonou in Benin Republic, and made a detour to Lagos in the heat of this crisis. I could have been picked up on that flight. I would have been history by now, as many found themselves to be. And during the Oputo Commission, some of the characters that were mandated to eliminate leaders of the struggle, they came up with their stories. They told stories. So we shouldn't make light of what happened. And I don't, by any stretch of imagination, want to create the impression that we were invincible in what we did. I think some of us we were just fortunate that we're still alive. Those who lost their lives were not stupid in what they did. They were following their conviction. That was what it was like. It was a moment of great stress for those involved, even for those who were not directly involved, family members of those who were involved. They were also confronted with the enormity of the crisis in the country. But at least one thing was clear. The myth of the military as messiahs was completely obliterated. And by the time 1998 came, all we were interested in was anything but the military. And that's why even we accepted the kind of democratic, or if you like, civilianized arrangement that came out of General Abdulsalami Abubakar's transition program, because many in the democracy movement were not at all convinced that that was the way to go. We thought we needed a full-fledged sovereign national conference that would produce a people's constitution that would then enable us to have a structure that would be thoroughly democratized and decentralized and would enable Nigeria to grow a lot more rapidly. That's not what happened. We got civilian government, and we've been struggling with that over the last 2.5 decades. But what is clear in the last 2.5 decades is also that Nigeria's political economy, fostered by that structure that we were unhappy with, is still built around allocation and patronage.
All right. We'll come to some of the, Dr. Fahimi, I'll come back to you in a moment. And Dr. Bugaji, I know you're still with us. There's so much to talk about tonight, and perhaps the reflections. But before I allow Mr. Jamiu Abiola to go, you heard some of the stories Dr. Fahimi said, and Dr. Bugaji has a lot of stories to tell. Also, in your mind, before you go, what would be your final word? There are a lot of the manifesto of your father's campaign at the time. And you see what is happening in Nigeria today, 26 years after the return to democracy. It does look like some of those dreams are not alive just yet.
Yes, because, democracy is work in the progress. But, one thing I always want people to always do is look at the cup as half full and not half empty. At the end of the day, we have to be very, 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 very careful. Because, God says in the Quran that, "Lain shakartum la azidanakum," meaning that if you are thankful, I will give you more. I always use God because Nigeria's problem has passed human capacity. So I have to always bring God involved.
It's only God that can save us. It's only God that can save us,
because, especially because we lack patience. When we have bad leadership, we are so patient. When we have good leadership, we expect much more. So at the end of the day, the good leadership that requires more patience, we will now be putting pressure. But I'm optimistic about the future of Nigeria because in the past 2 years, a lot of things have happened in this country that has not happened in any other democratic administration. And I'll be very brief about this. What makes a country great is food security. For the first time, we have a president that was visionary enough to come up with livestock ministry because aim of food security. We also have a president that in regional development ministry. And of course, we've seen all the regional developments, commissions created all over the country. These things were not created for no reason. There's a purpose. The purpose is for everybody to develop separately but together at the same time in their own pace. We have the Southwest Regional Development Commission. We have, the North Central. All of these things were not just done in a vacuum. Then we also have this new tax policy that has actually been very, very, very cautious to make sure that the most vulnerable people in society are not adversely affected, because it has made sure that they've protected the most vulnerable people in society, middle class and the poor. So we now have, once that is implemented, and we have a system of generating income that is not vulnerable to shocks, international, global shocks, then we can actually start planning for a better tomorrow.
All right. So I'd like you to wrap up in this way. Tell us, would Nigeria have been better than this if your father had become president?
Nigeria would have been better in the sense that at that time was a very special time in global times. It's a time that the world itself, that 1993 period, was having a international, economic, boom. So we could have tapped into that. But what did we get in return? We got a kleptomaniac as a head of state. But I'm not going to talk about General Abacha because, he has his own problems wherever he has found himself. But I'm just trying to say that time we would have built up on.
You saw the account of IBB,
yes,
on your family, on your father. What do you think?
Well, that he mentioned that the election was actually annulled partly by General Abacha. But all of that to me is all tales in the moonlight, because if that is the case, nothing stopped him from bringing up that when General Abacha died to General Abdul-Salam, who is also from Niger State and is a close friend of his, and say, I was forced to annul this election because General Abacha wanted to kill MK Abiola. Now MK Abiola is actually in jail. Why don't you just release him and let him even go to get medical checkup as opposed to him eventually dying in jail? So at the end of the day, even if he didn't even tell Abdul-Salam to de-annul the election, at least let him go to have medical. But of course, all that did not come up. And Abacha was dead. So if Abacha was the problem, then they could have actually come up with the result. This result that was announced in his book could have been announced when General Abdul-Salam, came into power, and they would have actually allowed him to even go and get medical checkup. Maybe he would have survived.
All right. Jamiu Abiola, SSA2 President Bola Tinubu on linguistics and foreign Matters, the son to late MKO and Kudrat Abila. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know you have some other engagement, but that's
you.
why I allow you to go. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you.
Dr. Bugaje is with us, and we've been talking about the legacy of the June 12, and we're going into the tenets and what democracy means and whether or not Nigeria is actually working in it. But the reflections on the legacy of June 12 and what happened today, Dr. Bugaje, are you impressed? And what are your thoughts about what happened today in terms of the recognition, the speech of the president, and where we are today as far as the reflections or the memories of June 12 is concerned?
Well, let me thank you for putting together this team, getting all the dimensions. But let me first pick on a point which I think Kaide Fahimi raised, and maybe correct or complete the story. The opposition against the annulment of June 12 was not just within the Southwest. There was a lot of opposition within the North itself. You remember you did yourself acknowledge the fact that, Abiola won the election in Kano, despite the fact that son of Kano also contested with him. So that was the level of, if you like, integration that we had achieved during that going up and down in the country, having meetings, on the June 12. And of course, eventually we sustained our struggle against the military, to the point where some of us, got arrested, detained, our passports were confiscated by the Abacha regime. Before, of course, then we were meeting with Kaide's group, in Paris, in other European cities, all trying to see how can we salvage the situation. So I think it's good to make the point that it was a national thing. It's not just a regional matter, because this, I think, will help us to understand, that what is important is that we never allow issues or politicians to divide the country like they have been doing in the last few years since they came back, to power. Now, the event today is very significant for all those who really want to restore justice and equity in Nigeria. Now, Kaide made a point, which I want to really pick up from there, that even though we have gotten this kind of democracy, even though we have a civilian government, but the political economy, which is the actual engine where you social engineer your societies, the political economy is still an economy where you get wealthy without production. That is prosperity without production. And whatever the speech, we have now graduated from just listening to speeches that are meant to be politically correct and to look good. What I think we are interested is not the speech. What are the actions? Because it is the actions, the policies, the way the government is run that is actually going to change the lives of the ordinary people. Democracy is about people. Democracy is designed to serve the people. And the question really is, are the people being served? And the point is, for me, the political economy that we are running at the moment has been impoverishing the people, has created that kind of situation. If you recall, you talked about the black struggle in the United States. And one of the foremost figures is James Baldwin. He has written nearly a dozen books. And I think in his book, The Fire Next Time, he made this very important point, which I keep repeating. He said that the most dangerous person in any society is somebody who has nothing more to lose. And we are producing large number of people who have nothing more to lose. What do you say to people whose parents or relatives have been taken by the bandits and they have sold everything the family has to be able to get the person back? Now he is back. There is no land to farm. There is no house to live. There is no money to start any business. As if we don't have government. There is no arrangement that I know. So if you want to know where we are, ask these people. Ask the young man who has struggled to go through a university. He has a degree. 5, 10 years down the line, he's still waiting for a job that is not there. Ask the small business runner, the SMS, the small and medium scale enterprises, SME. How is he managing? There is no electricity. The bills for electricity have gone so high that there is no way you can make any profit. Look at the man who ran the Kekena Pep, trying to struggle, and now they cannot even make ends meet. What kind of economy is that? What kind of democracy is that? If you cannot provide, if a democracy cannot provide for the people, I think it has lost the moral credibility to be there. What is it for? What is the purpose of government? The purpose of government, and the Constitution is very clear on that, is to provide for security and welfare of the people. Ask yourself, where is the security? Where is the welfare? Where is the comfort that we are supposed to get from that? The per capita today is $877, which is the lowest since 1960. Isn't it a disgrace? Isn't it a badge of dishonor for the Democrats, or I would say for those politicians in government, that they have brought us to this level and they are still talking about democracy? So I really think, Sheun, we have to go back to the fundamentals. It's no longer this discussion of whether you have created this or that. And I feel there is a total disconnect between those who are ruling and the realities of society. In your last statement, the last words, you did make that very important point. I want to repeat it here, that it looks like the President Bola Tinubu has been completely encircled by psychopaths. They don't allow him to see the reality. They don't tell him the truth. But if he were to know the truth, if he were to be in a position to know what is really happening in society, he would be ashamed of himself. Because as far as I know, for what I know him, I never thought he will allow such a situation. And he's now there wallowing in the comfort of the villa, talking in ways that show that he does not even know what is happening in this country. If he knew, he would not be doing the kind of thing he's doing now. So honestly, Sheun, we have to go back to the fundamentals. Right. Tell me, what is democracy all about? What is the purpose of democracy? What are the gains? So if we are going to have metrics to measure our democracy, it would be the people. To what extent?
Yeah, and it's interesting that a lot of people don't know that people were jailed. Some young Nigerians may not realize that people were jailed. And that's one of the reasons why in our selection and invitation for this special program, we selectively and carefully picked the thoughts that we're going to be having tonight. Where did you serve the jail term, Dr. Bugaje? During the military junta? I was
jailed because I was taken to court. I was arrested in Zaria, in Ahmadu Bello University. I was brought to Kaduna, and I was supposed to be taken to Abuja, the underground cell in the SSS, to join a few other people. I think Rimi and Sule Lamido were already there. But somehow I was kept in Kaduna. My houses were searched. My families were harassed. My passport was seized, and eventually, somehow, I was released. But when I was released, until I think months after Abdul Salam has taken over, I couldn't even get my passport back.
Mm. And for you, those struggles, do you think it's worth it? Looking at the journey.
Oh, it is.
It's a struggle for our democracy. Is it worth it?
Yeah, but it's also the courage of conviction. If you are convinced that this is the way, then you must have the courage to see that conviction. Absolutely. Otherwise, what's the value of a man? Tell me. If he cannot stand for what he is convinced about, I don't think he's a person. You may call him anything else, but for me, to be a person, that dignity of being human is to be convinced and to stand up to your conviction.
And we're going to be upfront and very frontal tonight on the program. And that's why we have this list of eminent Nigerians, young and old. Dr. Usman Bugaje is still with us. Dr. Kade Fahimi is with us on the program. We have very eloquent and very vocal Nigerians like actor and activist Kate Henshaw. We will also be having Honorable Bello El-Rufai. We have Toyosi Akerele Ogunsuji, who is going to be joining us. And of course, we have Mr. Frank Nwiche Jr. right there on the program. But we're going to take a short time out on the program. When we return, everyone, what is democracy? What are we seeing today? The struggles for June 12th and our democracy, what we are marking today. Where should we be as a people? It's an intergenerational conversation on the state of our country today. But my colleague, Lanre Lasisi, gives us an understanding of what has happened today in the presidential villa in view of Democracy Day.
Here at the forecourt of the presidential villa here in Abuja. Now, this place has played a very significant role in the history of Nigeria, especially when it comes to the issue of marking and celebrating Democracy Day in the country. Now, for years, the country has celebrated its journey in the democratic dispensation and has had and held a lot of events at the Eagle Square, parades where dignitaries are invited and people come to celebrate the day. Now, around some years ago, we had some security concerns. That was stopped at the Eagle Square, and this place provided a very good substitute where it held some events to mark the day. Now, it was a little bit more subdued then. It wasn't filled with all the fun fare that we usually had at the Eagle Square. But what we had here was like a change of parade to mark the day and still pay significant attention to the importance of the day. So this is where that used to take place. Now, but with the coming of the President Bola Tinubu, last year, the event of the Democracy Day was moved back to the Eagle Square, and it held there with great fanfare. People came, the parade was lovely, everything took place there. This year, however, yesterday we were told that there will be no parade. It didn't mean that the day went unmarked, however, because while the president did not have a national broadcast as is usual to mark the day, the president, however, appeared in the National Assembly to address the parliament, to also speak to the nation on the country's journey in this democracy. And after that, we also had the lecture, which took place here at the presidential villa in the banquet hall, to also look at the gains of democracy in the country and look at how it can be sustained and what to look forward to. So it's not all been without any event, however, but it's nice to look back at this ground that has played a significant role in the country's history to mark this very day. From the presidential villa in the forecourt, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
Thank you so much, everyone. Today is significant in many senses. A different approach to marking the Democracy Day, where we saw President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who himself was a frontline figure in the Nadeko resistance movement. Tonight, we're having a conversation that is a bit different, and is an intergenerational figures that we've profiled on the program tonight. Dr. Kade Fahimi, former man who was on exile, former state governor, and Dr. Usman Bugaje himself was in prison because of the struggle for democracy. And I've since been joined on the program by a very notable voice in the Nigerian social activism. She's an actor, Kate Henshaw. She's with us virtually from Lagos. And also from our Lagos studio, Ms. Toyosi Akerele Ogunsuji, a social entrepreneur. All of them are here tonight to discuss and chart a way for our nation. And of course, I'm hearing and seeing some of your comments on social media. Let me just take a few and we get back into the conversation. Now, Fulani Taiwo on Facebook says, the struggle, nostalgic feelings and actualization of June 12, 1993 election mandate won by late Chief MKO is the aftermath of an uninterrupted democracy. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was one of the heroes who fought for the actualization of democracy far away and also putting an end to military dictatorship in Nigeria. And T. Cash Anea from Facebook also says, apart from June 12, what else has really redefined Nigeria? We can't afford to feed. Insecurity is ravaging our communities. Killings taking place on a daily basis. Devaluation of Naira. Economy is in shambles. No job for the youth of Nigeria, and the scary part of it all, poverty. Njoku Chinemere Gulak says on Facebook, who are now the most credible election ever held in Nigeria? Who were the principal actors? What were their reasons? Have they been brought to answer these pertinent questions? And on X is Lawrence Ajugwe, who says, if Nigeria is truly a democratic country, then people's vote should count. Make it one man, one vote. Let our vote count. No more computer glitches on election day. No more snatch and run with it. There is no democracy when people's mandates are stolen. And on Facebook, Francis Asham says, in the spirit of a majority of Nigerians, our democracy died long ago. It doesn't exist in the heart of average citizens. However, it is my prayer that our leaders put aside selfishness and wealth-making mentality and see leadership as a call to service. Let me take a few more. Big on Facebook also said, what's the point marking June 12 when democracy is dead in the country? Nwudu Austin says on Facebook, President Tinubu should sign executive order to reduce import duties and open up our land borders and allow goods to come in. He floated the Naira already. Why increase import duties again? Duties on all building materials should be reduced. Duties on motor vehicles, spare parts should be reduced. Duties on food items should be reduced. Fight corruption. Nothing will work in Nigeria until corruption is eliminated. Those are some of your views on social media. Keep them coming, and we continue to advance the conversation tonight. But let me bring in the new voices that have since joined us on the program. Mr. Yosi Akérèlé Ogunsiji and Ms. Kate Enshaw. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us on the program. Let me come to you, Ms. Enshaw. You, in your own sphere, you've tested the waters to wanting to represent, to wanting to also serve the people. But you have not kept quiet. You have always seen a few social issues and you brought it to the fore through the medium that you have power and impression over. But give us an understanding. You are not longer one of those of us who are young. You are becoming an elder stateswoman right now, if I may use that word. So in your own generation, you saw it live. You saw the protest. You saw all of those struggles. I don't know how actively you participated, but how would you describe our democratic run in the last 26 years?
Good evening, Sean. Thanks for having me on the program. I was caught up in the riots in June 12, 1993 at Ikeja. I was driving from work and then violence erupted. I was actually on Tony Street, when the violence erupted. But let me say that Dr. Usman Bugaje encapsulated everything that I wanted to say. I was just clapping where I was giving him a thumbs up as I listened to him. That our democracy is not being felt by the people. That is that is an understatement. The people are not feeling the effects of democracy. Yes, we have had uninterrupted democracy, but how does that trickle down? What is that trickle-down effect? How does it impact on the lives of the people, of the ordinary Nigerians? There is no middle class. We cannot tell any more lies to ourselves. The people are impoverished. The healthcare is in shambles. There's no social security. Forget what that minister said about using AI to locate poor people. I don't know why they come up with those kind of things. Everything around us is crumbling, and Nigerians are barely holding on by the skin of their teeth. But let me also say that the battle for the things that are important cannot be won in a day. We cannot keep quiet. We have to continuously and make sure that we hold government accountable. There must be justice, there must be equity, and there must be security for the people, the lives and property of the people. And like I said, Dr. Usman encapsulated everything. I didn't celebrate June 12th today. I just went about my day. I would have tweeted some happy democracy message, but there was nothing in me to say. How do I say? A dull feeling of something that hasn't really actualized, something that hasn't come to fruition, something that is dwindling, but with a hope in me that we will have a country to live for our children and they will have something to build on.
Chelsea, Mr. Ogunshiji, is it the same for you? Is your story similar to, or is the same with Ms. Hensha's story?
Sean, hi. Thank you very much for. It's good to be here tonight. I think for me, and I speak, and I believe that I speak for a lot of young people around the country. Just driving around the streets of Lagos and speaking at different youth programs today, where young people are convening to discuss democracy the way they understand it. I think we need to move from being stuck in the rut of discussing democracy as a concept and think about what democracy means to a generation that is so disconnected from the realities and the story and the historic symbolism of June 12 and what it means for us. For me, I really just want to I mean, we've lost too many lives. There's too much bloodshed. There's poverty in the country. The economic indices don't show that people are, able to feed well. I mean, for me, I'm going to focus on forward and not just on worry about what's happened in the past. And for me, what the democracy of Nigeria would look like is a country of equal opportunities. I just really want, just driving around the streets today, the sheer number of children on the streets either begging, those children should be in school. The young people who are hawking in traffic, those young people should be given skills, education. For me, democracy should look like free and fair elections. Democracy should look like separation of powers, where people, a country where people feel respected, feel supported, feel protected. For me, democracy should look like a system where the leadership feels accountable, and not just feels accountable, but is compelled by the laws of the land, compelled by the system, that the constitutional provisions, for the country, the leadership should be accountable to the led. I think that our democracy is still learning on the job. 26 years later, and if we're going to have to face reality, we talk about these things year on year. It's time to put some more concrete action into, we're going to have this conversation in 2026 on Democracy Day, and I think I want to challenge the leadership of Nigeria and even all the different states, just after seeing the different adverts of the various governors, that, if that democracy does not mean something for the man on the street, for the child who was born into a country where, the first thing they heard was up NEPA, for the young people who are out on the road, who are simply trying to hustle, to be able to get a daily bread, yet they constantly hear that Nigeria is a giant of Africa. They're hearing us measure, economic development in terms of GDP and percentages, which they cannot relate with, whilst we are here trying to fix simplistic issues like, power, infrastructure, just have basic roads, running water, basic amenities. Some other countries are celebrating the shipping of their last barrel of oil out of the country. Others are using artificial intelligence to transform their education and healthcare systems. I think it's time for us as a country, in this as we think about this democracy, to stop majoring in the minors, to stop thinking about what are we going to say to the people rather than what are we going to do. We need a more legacy-conscious leadership. People need to know that, nobody's going to live forever. Nobody's going to last forever. The other day, I flew with a governor who had to carry his laptop himself. And I'd flown with him. I'd seen him on TV with multiple aides traveling. And it's important for people to be able to sit back and understand that the privilege you have to sit in office to to make decisions that critically touch on the future of people's children, people's young people, of citizens who by no means decided that they wanted to be Nigerians. For me as a citizen, am I happy today? Is it symbolic for me that today is democracy? What does it even mean? People are going about their daily jobs apart from the fact that offices aren't open, so people aren't working. What is the symbolism to the child who probably will be chased out of school tomorrow because they can't pay school fees, or the one who has to sit on the floor because there are no chairs, or teachers who are underpaid because someone has used the funds meant for education to fund other irrelevant things in government? I think it's time for us to begin to think of more legacy-conscious leadership. It's time for us to begin to think of what the dividends of democracy actually mean to our people. For this generation, democracy would, in my mind, look like skills development. We need to be able to prepare young people for the future of work and the fourth industrial revolution. Show them that young people are capable. We now live in an era where the wealth of nations is directly proportional to the quality of the human capital of that country. And it goes without saying that Nigerian young people are extremely talented people. The right policies, the right environment, the right opportunities where everybody's given a level playing field, irrespective of who your father is, where you come from, the color of your skin, the language you speak, the God you serve, is what an ideal democracy looks like to me. And I think, rather than interrogating these issues in 2026, and then gather to, we talk a lot in this country. It's time to, sit the talk down a little bit and begin to apply concrete action.
Right. I'm going to pitch you guys against the likes of Dr. Fayemi and Dr. Bugaji. Both of you, Toyosi and Kate, both of you are closer to the younger generation. You use tools that some of the younger generations, I see Dr. Fayemi a few times, but their own generation struggle to catch up. But Toyosi and Kate, I'm going to drag you in a conversation, an intergenerational conversation, of whether the Nigerian youth of today even understand the principles and the elements of a democratic operation in our country. And I'm going to go with a definition. The definition of Larry Diamond, who says, in his own view, he thinks that democracy is a system of government with 4 key elements. He said, a system for choosing and replacing a government through free and fair elections. Do we have free and fair election based on that definition? Secondly, active participation of the people as citizens in politics and civic life. Is that happening in our country? 2, the third one is protection of the human rights of all citizens. All citizens. The fourth one, a rule of law in which the laws and procedures apply equally to all citizens. These are Larry Diamond's own elements of democracy. And this is how I'm going to pitch both of you. And the first question, this is how I'm going to go about it. Kate and Toyosi, have we lost the younger generation or your own generation in the scheme of how democracy works?
You have, I would say that they are outside of it. They do not feel included in democracy. Just going past the toll gate today, I saw a huge amount of police trucks, nothing less than 30. I wonder why they gather there. If people choose to come outside and hold flags and say, oh, we don't feel like, oh, we want to celebrate, what is that presence for? That rubbed me off the wrong way already, because you are anticipating problems. And there shouldn't be. People should be able to move around freely. So I wonder why they were there. And for me, it was like the person who is in power today was one of the most vocal against institutions and things that did not benefit the people. So why is there trying to be some kind of suppression of the voices of the people? So I would say the young people are on the outside. They're doing their own thing, and they're like refusing to be quiet. I would say that.
Chelsea, what's your own view? Are the young people left out?
Sure, I think.
Or are you people left out if you belong to the young people? Because,
sure, I'm a millennial. I'm millennial. I'm not Gen Z or Gen Alpha. But
the way she's describing it, Chelsea.
But Shehu, I think the young people are tired. I think Nigerian young people are exhausted. I don't see much of a glimmer of hope in the Nigerian dream if you talk to young people. In a country where young people are practically living in their businesses as SMEs are microcosms of Nigeria. Their tech startups are microcosms of Nigeria. They're trying to make everything work on their own. And while a few people care, the majority of the leadership do not care. So the young people feel unseen, largely unrecognized, and largely unprotected. And when you talk about the concept of free and fair elections, and you think about, fundamental human rights and all of that, I don't feel that the young people of this time in this country at this material moment, feel like they are part of Nigeria. I hear a lot of Nigerians sound like this country has failed us. And that's why, as much as we can try to color it in a way that we don't, there's really not much you can do, especially when, people feel strongly about certain issues and they don't feel like, they're getting the right kind of, leadership and the right kind of protection, the right kind of provision, the right kind of enabling environment to thrive. And a lot of Dr. Fahimi, for example, Dr. Usman Bugaje, a lot of our leaders are people who fought tirelessly for this democracy. I am not confident that the best of the dividend of democracy that they hoped for 26 years ago is what we're experiencing in today's Nigeria. All hope is not lost. However, time is ticking and people's lives are moving on. And we cannot continue to play, Ludo with people's lives and be learning on the job. We need prepared leaders. We need people who have a heart for the people. And we need systems that demand a mandatory accountability from leaders. The very essence of democracy is also to include a system where there is a proper, appropriate punitive measure for offenders. People who steal our money should go to jail. People who rape our democracy, people who are given jobs. What is the performance management system for our recruitment into public service? What kind of opportunities do we create for a level playing field so that people that are as competent or as politically savvy are in the same room and they're working together for the common good of our people? Does the average Nigerian feel like the politician representing him, whether it's from the local government to the House of Assembly to the National Assembly, do they feel confident that those people are doing their bidding and representing the best of their interests in a way that democracy trickles down? It looks to me like it's almost like an helicopter project. I don't know that the woman in the market who's trying to sell her atarodo and the vegetables this evening cares about the symbolism of today's Democracy Day. But when you go to other countries, I went to, in my class in Harvard a couple of years ago, some of the military guys were, on Veterans Day in the US, I saw them weeping. I used to volunteer for Veterans Day and I will ask them, why do you feel this passionate about your country? And they answered me and said, some of us will lay our lives down for this country because my entire education from primary to tertiary, the reason why I'm at Harvard today is because America stood up for me. America gave me everything I am today. How many Nigerians will say Nigeria made me everything I am today? Without government patronage, without knowing people, without having to struggle through it on their own, and without, the government through the years trying to take credit for the work that our citizens are doing. We need to spot the stars before they become stars. That is when we communicate the genuine interest of government in the people that truly are putting our country on the global map. I think that if you ask the average young person today, that is what I envisage is in their heads and in their minds and in their hearts. And I've spoken to a couple of them today, at least 2,000 of them at different events I've had to go to be keynote speaker and all of that. So I think it's something for the leadership to think about. That we can't go, we would have the privilege to put our children in school abroad, but are we building a country where our children will be able to come back to? Because one day the rich will have nothing.
And I'm wondering,
the poor will have nothing to eat but the rich.
From both of you, before I bring in the alleged culprits the representation of the alleged corporate group. So, and I'm wondering, Joyce and Kate, how did we get here? That the young Nigerians of today are totally left out of the scheme of things. They are disillusioned about their country. The concept and the principles of democracy is none of their business. Are we to blame the generation of Dr. Bugaji and Dr. Fayemi? Are they responsible for this, or where did this gap really come? And I'll allow them to defend themselves. We're looking for the way forward. How can we have an inclusive, people-oriented democracy running our country? I need a very straightforward and quick answers from both of you. Let me start with you, Kate. Need a very straightforward and quick. Let me start with you, Kate. Need a very straightforward and quick.
What are you saying? Your conversation was sort of delayed, so I didn't really hear you. Are you saying, are they to blame? Are you saying Mr. Fayemi and Dr. Bugaji?
Their generation, are they to blame? Should we blame their generation? Because where did we get it wrong? How did we get here? That the 20s and 30-year-olds in this country, and in fact the 40-year-olds, some of them are so disillusioned about this country.
Somewhere along the line, there has been a miscommunication. You heard Mr. Fayemi himself speaking about his role during the June 12 and getting some subterfuge going with the Kudirat Abiola radio. And of course, you heard Bugaji. I'm sure that they did their bit, okay? With each generation comes the need for you to give 100% of yourself. Yes, you might not get it 100% correct, but you contribute your own bit, and hopefully that bit you contribute will coalesce and, pile up as others contribute along the way, thereby giving us the democracy that we desire and we truly, really want for the people. So I'm not going to put 100% blame on their door. There are people before them who came before them as well, and people who are still after them. So they can speak for themselves. I've said my bit.
Chelsea.
So, I've learned that blame games don't build countries. And I'm one of the in the very early days of my career, I spent a lot of time worrying about what people did well, what they didn't do well, how they could have done it, what they could have done well. I'm in the state of mind now where I'm asking myself, where do we go from here? And more than where we're going, how do we get there? I wouldn't say that all of the older people who championed the cause of Nigeria's democracy were culprits. I know a few champions amongst them who have remained consistent through the years. But my worry is the breakdown of institutions in this country. A nation that is run based on the whims and caprices of individuals will accomplish very little when it comes to democratic dividends and the long-term impact, social impact on the lives of the citizens. We need institutions in this country. And when you think about, the failure of democracy and democracy learning, people learning on the job in 26 years, it wasn't because individuals, a lot of individuals got into the political system with the intention that they would take advantage of the system. It is because people that came before them found a way to boycott the system, destroy the system in a way that delivered it for them as individuals, and they put themselves above the common good of our people. And so what we need is a country where there are laid down tenets and institutions such that it codifies clearly what the limits of the power of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the limits of the power of the governor of a state or a member of the House or National Assembly. I think clearly when we get to the point where institutions do not depend on individuals, and the question is, on this situation, what does the law say? On this situation, even within organizations, you cannot, when you think about the fact that businesses that depend on systems and structures succeed way better, way more than the ones that depend on the whim of an individual who can wake up and say, I don't feel like going to work this morning, and nobody's going to question him. It's a very risky democracy that we run. the kind of democracy that is convenient for our leaders, depending on what side of the bed they wake up in the morning. Today, I don't like this gentleman. The Constitution does not empower me to remove him, but I will remove him because I don't like him. Nobody questions, our leaders. And it's very precarious for Nigeria's democracy that our leaders are almost not accountable to anybody. Our citizens themselves do not understand their rights. I'm significantly worried about the fact that Nigerian citizens do not know how much power they carry. Democracy in itself is of the people, by the people, for the people, meaning that it is our collective power. The day Nigerians wake up to understand that the power of our networked minds is greater than the sum of their parts, is the day this country will begin to see we'll see a new shift in a way we've never seen before. But more than that, for the young people, I think that it's important for us to recognize that we will not stop building bigger prisons if we do not begin to build more, invest more in education and build more schools. In a country where we're prioritizing billions of naira to projects that will not stand the test of time, when in fact we're supposed to be investing in the human capital of our people. Everywhere I've gone in the world and all the countries I've traveled to, Nigerians are the most brilliant people in the world. There is nowhere I've gone to that I've tried to sound or be like anybody else. I'm a proud Nigerian everywhere I go. The only thing that limits us as a people is the leadership of our country and the systems in our country. But nobody is going to tell you. And when people say, oh, Nigerians do cybercrime, oh, young people are doing yahoo, I'm like, you know what? For every bad thing that you hear out of Nigeria, there are 10 good things happening. You will not profile my country in that fashion. And I think that level of patriotism is because some of us have walked through the years. Even if the opportunities to live abroad would arise and have arisen in the past, I would rather be a first version of a Nigerian than a second version of any other person. But we deserve. This country is too rich in mineral resources, rich in human resources, for us to be grappling with the deep-seated poverty that has now epitomized our country. There's so much to be proud of as a Nigerian that if our leaders will simply focus on the important things and sidestep the unnecessary distractions for a little bit, I truly, truly, truly do hope while without, their own challenges and without their own faults, I have to commend President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for just the sheer amount of young people that have been given roles of not just active participation, but roles of leadership in this government. I was a constant advocate for we need more young people in government. Nemo dad quod non habet. You can't give what you don't have. We cannot continue to put old people in roles to deliberate on a future they are not going to be part of. We cannot kill all the young people. That's not my advocacy. But we need to do what you're doing now, Shehu, intergenerational collaboration, where young people are learning from the experiences of the older people, and older people are, benefiting from the energy, the ingenuity, the creativity, and innovative mindset of our young people. So when you give young people the opportunity to lead, and you allow them the autonomy of creative thinking, what you're going to have is, multidimensional success. But it's not just the tokenism of let's give them, appointments here and there. Let's put young people in crucial positions and give them the opportunity and the backing to thrive, to succeed, and hold them accountable. Because when we also advocate for young people in positions of authority, we've also seen young people given opportunities and they blew it and they were worse than the older people. So it's not enough to be a young person. It's not enough to be a woman to qualify to get a position in government. What you need is a combination of competence, character, capacity, and the ability to be different from the people that you've stayed many years criticizing.
All right.
We need a system that allows innovation to thrive beyond constant tokenism of, we've done this, put it in the media. We need to begin to create a little bit more and not just remain consumers of innovation, but active producers and exporters of innovation.
So I will allow the representation of the generation that I call the corporate generation, who perhaps enjoyed a lot of stuff in this country, free stuff, as against the generation of the Toyosis of this world. Although it seems that Kate is joining their generation somehow in the manner in which she has spoken tonight. But I know that we've since been joined by Honorable Bello El-Rufai. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight on the program. But just give me a moment, Honorable. Let me go to Dr. Bugaje and Dr. Fayemi quickly. There are allegations leveled against your generation of how, just how did we get here that the young people of this country seem so disconnected, so disenchanted about what Nigeria represents, how the interests of Nigeria, the future of Nigeria, even the democratic run in Nigeria. Those who were born before, in the last 26 years or before the last 30 years or so, they seem to be aloof. What happened? What did you do to this country in your generation? Let me begin with you, Dr. Fayemi.
Okay, so the truth of the matter is that when I was protesting at the barricades and involved in the democratic struggle, it was a struggle against unaccountable power. But it was also a struggle for accountable power that deliver public goods. So Teose and Kate are right. That's what we were determined to achieve. And I don't think any of our presidents, President Tinubu inclusive, decides to run for office in order to punish Nigerians or to make the lives of Nigerians unlivable. That wasn't their intention. But I spoke to something earlier in my introductory remarks, Sheol. I spoke about the structure of the political economy of Nigeria and the debilitating impact of that structure and system on society. So it's not enough to have competent people. Having competent people, we've had competent people in government, but we've produced maybe oases of excellence, but in totality, it has amounted to a reversal of fortune. So there must be something that we need to do, and I think it is addressing the structural deformities of the Nigerian Federation, because that is what has impaired the possibilities that we are all looking for to build a better society. So we can have as many Kaude Fayemis and Usman Bugajes in the system as much as we like. We will still not produce the totality of a better society or build a better relation between state and society by addressing the distrust that currently bedevils state-society relations. The people do not trust their government.
That's right. Correct.
And the people do not have sufficient power to remove the government that they do not trust. So you need to build more trust in the citizens in order to be able to reorganize society. But we cannot do that by just thinking all we need to do is bring smart kids and intelligent TLC into the equation. We've had smart people in government in Nigeria, and we were not able to make the change that we desired. Either because we don't have the critical mass, as I've said, or because the structure that we're dealing with, the political economy that we're dealing with, that rentier system that we are operating, only privileges allocation and prebendal patronage, not productivity for posterity, for prosperity. So it's about sharing the national cake, and we're creating more agencies to share the national cake. So development commissions here today, they will not produce the results we want, no matter who you put at the helm of affairs in those institutions. I know President Bola Tinubu. Usman knows him very well. We've worked closely with him. We know he is a genuine social democrat. He desires change. He wants to do change, but I don't know what happens when you get into
I was
that
just
space.
going to ask what is happening.
in the way, but what happens, which I know you used to believe in, and which we put in the manifesto of our party, is what we broadly describe as restructuring. But what that speaks to is addressing that disconnect between state and society and bringing government closer to the people. But it's not just a problem in Nigeria. Although we're dealing with Nigeria, Kate, TLC, the rest of us are more worried about the Nigerian problem. But liberal democracy is faced with an existential crisis worldwide. And autocracy is on the rise, or what you might even call democratic autocracy, because they are elected. The Viktor Orbans of this world are elected. The Erdogans of this world are elected. But what they practice is authoritarian democracy that at least produces some public goods for their people. So the people are not as agitated as we are. We are practicing what we call, if you like, democracy, or we have elections, or electocracy. But it's still not producing the public goods as we want it, because the majority of our population are not positively disposed to what is happening. So I think the younger people, I throw that challenge to Toyosi and the generation younger than Toyosi and co., if you are expecting the old guard, the fuddy-duddy old guard, to vacate the scene for you, it's wishful thinking. You are going to have to break those doors down. Younger people would have to confront this monster. How they do it, they will find allies in the older generation to help them in that process. But if you are waiting that we're going to clean up this system for you, and then hand it over to you to run, you might as well be waiting for Godot. Wow. I think the reality that is confronting us is that we're not doing well as a nation. Nigeria is going to produce the third most populous nation by 2050 in the whole world, after India and China. And you are absolutely right that we're not paying enough attention to human capital, which is really going to be the game changer for any nation in the world. That's what we ought to be putting our energy into.
Dr.
Education, healthcare, and security.
Dr. Fahimi,
we're not doing enough of that.
Yeah, Dr. Fahimi, you've touched on something very sensitive. I was going to directly go to Dr. Usman Bugaje, but Honorable Bello El-Rufai is here, and you perhaps have touched on something very sensitive, and I'll plead for Dr. Bugaje's patience just for a moment, please. Allow me to bring Honorable Bello El-Rufai into the conversation, because he's an honorable member in the House of Reps under 40. And in that sense, he will perhaps be able to speak a different language. I see the way you respectfully move your motion to older members of the National Assembly. We're looking at an intergenerational conversation about our nation, our democratic rule. Those who are at least under 10 when we returned to democracy in 1999 may not have a full understanding of where we are, the struggle for this democracy. But as a person, a young person in the National Assembly, what has the struggle been like?
Good evening, Shaun. I don't know if I'm audible.
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the question. It's an honor to meet you, Ms. Henshaw. Of course, Excellency Governor Fahimi is a friend of my father, and Professor Usman Bugaje is a father, originally from Katsina. But Shaun, thank you for the questions. I think His Excellency Governor Fahimi so I kept nodding in some of the things he said. But if you don't mind, I know you're the anchor. I'm sorry I'm late, by the way. Maybe too much salami, so I've been struggling with food poisoning. But you initially said Dr. Bugaje will speak. Yeah, I think it's only fair after the governor speaks that he speaks. Because there's a lot to learn even here, for me at least. I have a problem with, I don't know about Ms. Henshaw, but the likes of Dr. Bugaje and the former governor need to write more books. When this struggle of June 12 happened, I was 5 years old. But our fathers and our leaders really write books to correct the histories. Whether we read as a generation is another thing. But if you don't mind, Sean, I know you're the anchor and time is of the essence. I think Dr. Bugaji should speak. As a father, I would not come into him. I'm sorry I'm late. If that's okay. Thank you, sir.
Just a quick issue. Yes. Just a quick information for Bello. Part of the problem is that younger people are also not reading enough. I wrote about June 12 in 2005. Go and look for my book, Out of the Shadows. It's a comprehensive account.
I'm going to Google it, sir. I've read Dr. Bugaji's book on the Sokoto Caliphate. I know he does symposiums, but I'll find that. And you're part of the struggle. But I'm just glad to be here. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm struggling with food poisoning after I hear all sides, and he's lying to himself. It wasn't a motion, Sheon. I think they've been bringing it back for me to trend. But some of us saw. Anyways, let Dr. Bugaji speak. I just say my truth. It wasn't a motion. It was a debate on the budget of the country. If that's okay, and if he won't speak, I could go ahead. Thank you.
Oh, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Dr. Bugaji will come afterward. Please go ahead.
Okay. It's a glad day for me. As I said, it's a pleasure to speak to you, Ms. Henshaw. I knew you as a brilliant actress.
Same here, Bello. My pleasure.
Your partner, even though we're in different parties. As I said, Dr. Bugaji is a father to me, because he's actually one of the people my father looks up to. Governor Fayemi is on the record. Sean, thank you for having me. I didn't want to speak because I'm sure His Excellency will understand. My father is in opposition now. So my team and I, of young people, have asked me to avoid any media relation.
Don't worry, you are with us. We are still in APC like me.
I know, sir.
You are protected.
Yes, sir. But part of the things that Sean speaks about, that some of us are trying to do as young members, it's because of, some of you here, but particularly Dr. Bugaji and His Excellency, because, we need to read more as a younger generation. I think we're lost. I think we focus on the things that don't matter. I am in this position not because there is privilege there, but I worked with the current governor of the state, Senator Obasani, as his chief of staff. I had the access to meet Dr. Fayemi many times as the governor. I was meant to do my NYSC in Ekiti, maybe because my father wanted to discipline me. But then His Excellency lost his election, and Governor Fayemi came in, so I never went. So I stood in. I stand by what I say, and I got parts of what His Excellency said, and I read a lot of what Dr. Bugaji writes in articles. I just believe we need to cut. We need to do more. We need to sacrifice more for the people. We're tired. In the north, the numbers are even more terrifying. And I think the failure for your generation, in my view, sir, is, at 37, I have young people asking me to mentor them when I'm not even ready yet. I know if I speak, there are times that I trend because I'm an Elrufai, but I'm in APC because I won in APC, because I follow the principles of sticking to a platform regardless of ideology. And I'm sick of, I say this to my friends all the time, there are good men in every party, I recall APC being formed and some of the reforms initiated by Governor Fayemi. As he mentioned, he worked with Ashwaju, so did Dr. Bugaji, but I know Dr. Bugaji has designed many manifestos, the likes of Atiku. Now it's the implementation that's the problem. I watched on this memorable day when everybody's against subsidy now because it's gone wrong. But if I recall, all the three main candidates, His Excellency Peter Obi in Labour Party, our father Vice President Atiku, all said subsidy needed to go. I mean, you have more data than me. Yeah, it needed to go. What is going on here, sir? Since elected, and I don't plan to run again. I don't know how you guys have done this, sir. It's every day I still get calls as a member. My job primarily is to pass legislation, is to lobby, is to ensure that, I get a project in a certain area, not my company, but every day you get calls where people tell you their mother is going to die if you don't send 100,000. That system can't work where we have to keep, even if you're somebody that's established like our parents here, or Miss Henshaw, who I assume has more money than me, it is not sustainable unless we build a system. We have to, Sorry, please I spoke from the heart. I think I spoke about this a while ago. I think the notion that it's about me. One good thing about this new parliament is there are about 40 of us that are under 40. Your Excellency, Dr. Bugaji is Henshaw, I've told Shewan this, that we will not be here if the civil society in Yaga, not too young to run, had not partnered. And I guess that's Dr. Fahmi's point. Okay, you need the allies that are brilliant. Shewan knows I told him I don't do media runs. I didn't know the governor of Ekiti, the former governor. But when he said he might get Dr. Bugaji, he can testify. I said it would be an honor to share the space. So Dr. Fahmi made a point. The only reason I was qualified or eligible to be a rep member is because you saw public policy working in the right way. Civil society, Yaga, not too young to run, sitting down with the likes of, I found out later there was President Buhari that assented. I always thought it was President Jonathan. But that is what opened this door. Now, for me, as a young person, so people like Dr. Bugaji and His Excellency, even you, Sean, you've commended me many times, thank you. The least we can do is not fail young people, because as Dr. Fahmi said, if we don't stand out, the door will be further locked by the so-called kingmakers. So this is why some of us, not just me, they're brilliant young members, they're brilliant old members as well. I hope we should do better, but I've said this before, I'll say it again. I don't think things are fine. Let's not lie. I really don't, It's not an easy issue. I said that. I don't think things have been fine for us off because we're not wealthy enough to marry ourselves. You had a better community than we did. I'm not here to blame, but the young people that are useless. I just think you need to guide us more, and I wish things, as I said, I still want them to implement Orensai report, cut opening agencies, but I'm not going to stand up and say that all the time. I'll be in trouble, and I will. Thank you so much. It's an honor. Sorry I spoke too long.
No, you didn't speak too long, Honorable Bello Erufai, because I think that Nigeria of today is a generation of the young blood and the young energy. That is the energy that will drive this country to the next level. And that's why we're having this conversation. It will have been all gray hairs and old folks and very elderly that will be speaking on this program. But Channels Television has thought that the energy that will take this democracy to the next level and the thought of technology and AI that will rebuild this country in a new perspective and in a new format. We'll take a break, everyone. When we come back, Dr. Bugaji is still with us. Honorable Bello Erufai is with us. Dr. Kade Fahmi, Toyosi Ogunsuji is with us, and Kate Henshaw. We'll be right back on the program. And we'll be looking at the way forward for our democracy. What are the tenets of democracy? The elements. Are we living them? If not, what are the way forward for us as a people? We'll be right back, everyone. Wrong moral standing. Law.
That under the present administration, in a short span of 2 years, our nation has witnessed a broad erosion of the principles. There has been a sudden decline in security and the quality of life for millions of Nigerians. We have traversed from rigged elections to collapsing social service, from soaring poverty to rising corruption, and from seemingly stable economy to parlous economy.
The PDP has been issuing a scathing communique describing June 12 as a reminder of betrayed hopes and democratic erosion under the current APC-led government. The citing economic hardships, suppressed dissent, and electoral irregularities, while the halls of power echoed with speeches. The street told another story. The PDP says, quote, June 12 Democracy Day, therefore, a struggle by Nigerians against an oppressive, despotic, and lawless system driven by impunity, high-level deception, and reckless anti-people tendencies is being witnessed under the APC administration. Let me bring my colleague, Gloria Music, who is covering our National Assembly, to give us an understanding of what day, where we saw a new twist to marking Democracy Day.
Now, it was quite a remarkable and rare gathering earlier today, Sheung, as the President Bola Tinubu arrived to the national, what is perceived as historic assembly. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News. Assembly. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Thanks so much, Gloria Umezuke, National Assembly correspondent there. National Assembly correspondent there. Let's get back to the conversation. Dr. Usman Bugaje, Dr. Kade Fayemi. Back to the conversation. Dr. Usman Bugaje, Dr. Kade Fayemi, Honorable Bello Erufai, Ms. Tuyosi Akrele Ogunsuji, and Ms. Kate Henshaw have all. I'd like us to wrap up.
To have a vision to see the future. So I think what we require basically is to see how we can nurture or mentor younger people to up that. And I think at the end of the day, to make Kaide's suggestion a little more formal and more, if you like, systematic, I think the young people need to understand that in the real world, where politics is played, where life is lived, nobody gets what he deserves. Everybody, and Kaido knows how he has been quite slippery. I have to say this public, Kaido. I mean, we to do this thing. So it's a better, this is what we need to do. And this is what we need to do. And this is what is really. Now, how do we start that? Shehu, you have done very well, but you need to do more. And what is it? Done very well, but you need to do more. And what is it? We need to change the conversation.
Okay, as I said, it's been tough because it's always easier to criticize from the outside. It's more complex. But Nigeria has stepped up from the dark days of PDP, if you wouldn't mind me saying this, in the regard that my father was a minister in PDP, but we heard stories of people lining up and results being announced. Okay, so there has been progress, but what we should do is elevate it, not, and that falls on us as legislators with the power to pass the law. I know our credibility is low now because people think there's no, it's not, we're not challenging the executive and it shouldn't be like that, but I wanted to make that clear. But before I get to that, Dr. Bugaji mentioned something about power. Ms. Kate Henshaw over here, her power came from the culture. Your Excellency, you know this, and I know Dr. Bugaji knows this, that when you see what the Whiz Kids, the Burner Boy, do for this nation, when you see that Governor Sanwo-Olu realized when they had Dirty December, where it's a festival and all that, when he keyed in, there's something going on that the sectors that thrive in Nigeria, be it Nollywood, be it Ms. Funke, be it Tonye Abraham, it's the culture, the art. That is power, that is influence, our music and things like that. So I love the fact that Dr. Bugaji made it seem like it doesn't have to be political power.
Yes.
It doesn't, but there is a problem. And I've said this to many young people that think I've reached a level to advise them. I don't think I have. I've learned by being privileged to meet people that others don't have the access to, that at 37, I could take my time and leave something nice and come back if I have to come back. But what we need right now is, I think Nigeria is a democracy. I think that what has gone on is we don't read enough, especially as young people, and we are the loudest votes. You can't come to me and say APC is the problem if all the candidates said, for example, subsidy will go. That is not the problem. You can't come to me and say APC are all bad leaders. Well, APC gave me Dr. Fahmy, they gave me Governor Fashola. You can't say PPP is bad because they had Dora Kunli, God rest her soul. It's not that. And young people think in black and white. And Your Excellency, Dr. Bugaji, I see Ms. Henshaw, unless, we're angry at what we meet. I have 5,000 CVs in my office, 5,000, because they want to work for CBN. When in a decent society, we should sort out power, because bad people will fill it. We're tired of that, We debate it all the time, whether you're in a We debate it all the time, whether you're in a barbecue, whether it's salah. Politics comes, so they should. Now, this is where I'll keep of wisdom. In every nation I've studied, you need that. So may God guide us all. It's been a privilege once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Arufat. We just have a few minutes left to wrap up. And it's on that note of where do we go from here in the tenets and all we have seen. And I think for a moment, maybe I'll allow Dr. Fahmy to give the final word. So I'll go to the ladies, Toyosi and Kate, just in about 60 seconds each. Where do we go from here? In all of the tenets, are we retrogressing or are we moving forward? Let me begin with you, Kate.
Thank you so much, Bello, for speaking truthfully about privilege. Not many have that access. Thank you also, Dr. Bugaji, for also identifying the other sources of power which young people can leverage on. And I'll come back to Bello, talking about Yaga, talking about enough is enough. We're talking about that kind of access if truly you want to lead and you want to contribute to the well-being of your people in terms of politics. And that is where the open doors will be. But ultimately, let me close with this, that the power resides with the people.
Destination. And I also said that change is what we all want, but our theory of change must recognize that elections would not teleologically a better society. Into these conversations as leaders.
Here, this building holds an immense significance. This building holds an immense significance to his legacy and struggle, and that's why we are here to tour this edifice. Let's get after it.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Speak with us.
This is where the meetings used to happen. Most of the political meetings would happen here. Before it was very cozy. We had lots of chairs. We had tables. So this is where they were having the meetings, and whenever they would do like a press conference, this is where, when they arrested him, this is where they picked him up. So this is my dad. But this is all the neighborhood kids. This is where they come and play. They are free to come in and play anytime they want. And my dad, during the politics time, they used to cook, they used to kill cows every day. And people would just come in and our supporters, they'll come and eat. When you are running campaign, people like that June.
Show. Courtesy, IGP retired. NDDC at 25, a journey of holistic and sustainable development across.
Train.